as a school bus going to and from Cherry High School. She let us fill it with friends. No other friends ever said, oh, my mom's taking us to Lookout Mountain or Giants Ridge. So it was just our house was a haven for everybody to come to and have fun. Then during the week, we would go to Ely Lake, and we would swim with the cousins, Larry, Roy, and Rusty. And then on weekends, we'd come up to Lake Vermilion. And my grandmother owned it. It was bought in 1925. And then I remember as a kid that finally, when I was in 8th grade, my grandmother gave it to my dad and his brother. And my dad bought his brother out, and we got electricity. You know what it's like living with kerosene lanterns and taking a sauna for bathing and cooking on a wood stove and having ice box. It was a big event in our lives. Mom would take us around the bay water skiing. We'd go round and round, and Marie Mackey's here, and the first thing she said is we'd get to the lake on a weekend, we'd look across the bay to look to see if our sauna door was open, because then it signaled her that we're there. And there again, round and round, my mom would pull us all water skiing. We had a really, really good childhood. And like Ramona said, my parents didn't fight, so we had a very calm, passive family and safe home to go into. And there again, she took us to Lookout Mountain and Giants Ridge, and she would sit there with her coffee cup and book in that Quonset hut at Giants Ridge and wait for it to be 4:30 when it got dark and they closed. Then at age 41, and my dad was 45, and Ramona and I were in college, and Lindy was in 8th grade, and my mother was in tears, and I thought, oh, she's dying of cancer. She said, no, I'm pregnant. I'm thinking, you still do it at your age? Because I looked and I thought, oh my gosh, she's really old. And so during that time, my mom had just started her career again after being home with us. She started working for the county, and at 5 months pregnant, they told her she had to quit. Well, she waited till she was 6 months pregnant, then had Chrisley, who was, of course, the second, third, and fourth were all supposed to be a boy. But here we are, 4 girls, and we did well. And my mom and dad they took Chrisley to Disneyland, and they'd take her fishing, and she went everywhere they went. Chrisley always tells a story about the day my mom and her were catching frogs, and she had them in a bucket, and she took one of them and jumped in bed with my dad, who was sleeping in. So there goes the hopping frog, and there goes my dad out of bed. And then about that time, about 46, my mom's only sibling, her sister, was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was a real strenuous, it was a very hard time in our lives. And my mom and all of us were taking turns going to the hospital to take care of her. And during that time, my dad dropped dead of a heart attack. And my mom's whole life was turned upside down. And that's when she had to make the decision. What do I do? If I want to be a hairstylist, then I would be gone on nights and weekends, and I have Chrisley. And she looked at working at the mines, applying there in the office. But after having helped all of us through college, she helped my dad get his master's degree and type all his papers. She worked with Ramona and I and things that we had, and college was a natural for her. So that's what she did. She went back to college at age 47, and everybody said, why are you going to college? And she'd say, why not? And they said, well, you're so old. And she said, well, what difference does it make what age you are? If you're going to do it, go out and do it. So during that time, during that first school year, then her sister Norma also passed away from cancer. And what really shocked me was, I came home at Christmas. I went to Berlin, Germany to teach, and it was right after my dad died. It was so hard to leave, and I almost didn't go. And my mom pushed me out the door, and she said, this is your dream. You have to live your own life. And she told me at Christmas, that even though Dad and her and Chrisley were supposed to come to Europe and visit me and then go to Finland, she said, I'm coming to Europe. So the following year, that summer, Mom came to Europe for about 6 weeks, and we drove around. We went through Germany and, of course, Italy and Austria, Yugoslavia and Switzerland, and she saw the world and went back to college knowing that she's going to get that degree and make some money so she can do things in her life. And a few years later, Don decided to get out of the Army, and we went to the Twin Cities, and I went to a fall conference, and I asked every teacher that I knew, do you have any job openings? Do you have any job openings? And I'd call my mom, collect. Mom, there's an opening in St. Anthony. Mom, there's an opening in Inver Hills. Mom, or Inver Grove Heights. Mom, call her, collect. There's an opening in Minnetonka. And she always said, I can't drive the cities. I won't drive the cities. Well, guess what? Because she had substituted for a year, she wanted a job, she came to the cities, and all three offered her a job, and she took the one in Minnetonka, which was a 1-year contract. She worked for with another teacher whose wife worked for Minneapolis schools with adults, and he said, we're going to Arizona with we're going to buy a Dairy Queen. Why don't you apply for the job? And Mom ended up at the Minneapolis Technical College, that it's called right now, or it was the Minneapolis Vocational School, and she taught adults. And she even had one adult that said to her, Mrs. Jarnstrom, I'm really sorry that your husband died, but he died for a purpose. And that purpose is for you to be here with us and to teach us and to help us. And she felt really wanted and really needed. And, you know, during that time, I think when she was home, here's a story I have to tell you. The Lindy was in the Boundary Waters with some friends, and she was going to meet Chrisley and my mom and give her the fish. Well, when she meets Mom and Chrisley, or when Lindy meets my mom and Chrisley, my mom says, I just accepted a job for you in Colorado. Go back and pack up your camping gear and get yourself home, and you're going to Colorado. And Lindy, she shook, did you shake your head? Uh-huh. And she's going, Colorado? And sure enough, by the time she got into Evelyn, my mom had her car packed. And she had the apartment with some friends. Everything was set up. All she had to do was drive out. And my mom said she got in the car and drove how far out of Evelyn, and she turned around and she came back in tears and she said, I can't do this. And my mother said, what did she say, Lindy? Yes, you can. Don't be a baby. Get over there and do it. And she turned around, left the home, and went to Colorado and taught for a year. And then the next summer, I was in North Carolina and when I was getting out of the service, and she came to see the new grandson, baby Jeff. And the next summer, she came down to get Jeff and I and drive back in the van. And it was an honor because she was there when Don and I walked down the aisle for our master's degree. And the following day, we came to Minnesota. And then when Mom got her job in the cities, she was really lonesome, like Karen said, being a single woman. You know, couples usually don't invite you. So every weekend she'd come over to our house with Chrisley, and Chrisley would take Jeff and Maddie, when Maddie was old enough, and to do things. And it gave her purpose, and she came back into the house and helped me. And then we'll go on to the point where she was getting ready to retire and not knowing what to do for the following year. And then Lindy sees her out in Big Bay and says, Mom, you shouldn't be out in Big Bay fishing alone. This is dangerous. And then Lindy goes out and she writes an ad and puts it in the paper, and it said, wanted, fishing companion, dash, in good health. And she got a couple calls. One of them was Lloyd, and that was history because a year later, they were married. And what she really liked about marrying Lloyd is that he had started up his own docking business, building docks, and then she was able to help him with the books. Her and I would go to Menards in Duluth and have a trailer and full of lumber as long as we only had to go straight. And she would go to Minneapolis and get steel, and she could drive the truck with a big trailer and through the Twin Cities, and then Lloyd would drive. And after they got married, where did they honeymoon? In Alaska. I mean, the place that they both wanted to go and see. Then after that, they went fishing in Texas, and they drove around Florida, and then over the years, and Lloyd and Mom had a very, very good marriage. All of us were so happy, and each one of us missed him. It's been 11 years that we've seen Lloyd, and he used to say to my mom, "If anything happens to me, you won't be able to stay in this house alone." Ah, well, guess what? She stayed in that house from 2011 when he passed away until about 3 years ago. So she had the spirit and the gumption, and she knew she could do anything. And what she couldn't do, she knew she could find somebody to help her. So then during that time, Mom and I did a lot of traveling. We stayed with Karen in Venice, and it was a real highlight of her life, even though she was slowing down. She said to me one day, "You know, we should go to Alaska and close the chapter in that book." Because when my dad died, I was on my way to Alaska, driving there with a friend, and I got a call in the middle of the night from Ramona. And the next day, I had to fly back to the cities, and I couldn't go back to Alaska and see my friend. It was just too heartbreaking to think to go back. So lo and behold, maybe 2 weeks later after Mom said, "Let's go to Alaska," off we are in Alaska. I rented a car and we drove around for 18 days and saw my friends up there. You know, and one day we decided we'll take a cruise. She didn't like cruises because that was way too much walking, but she sure did like the socializing and the dinners and having fun. And then as she slowed down and we were in Florida, we bought a larger condo because the first one we bought wasn't big enough. Everybody that came down in the family saw it, and everybody wanted to stay there. And we put hurricane windows in the lanai so it would have air conditioning, and she spent many, many hours, and with friends coming and of course giving her her wanted advice. And so it was a blessing. She always said if she didn't have Florida, she would never have been able to stay at the lake all winter. It would have been too hard. And then I thought, I should give you some of her, I should end this right now because we want to go to have lunch at the Vermilion Club. And by the way, at the VC, they would not give us a separate room, but we're just going to go in. There will be tables set up with pizza and beverages, and you're going to help yourself and then go and find a seat wherever you'd like to sit. But her words all her life were, "I was born a Presbyterian, raised a Presbyterian, and will die a Presbyterian." So here she is with us this last time. We're going to take her to the Vermilion Club, where of course everybody knows she loved. And part of her will be at Lake Vermilion. Part of her will be in Florida that she loved. Part of her will be in the 2 homes that she lived at in Evelyn. And then she will be interned in the Evelyn Cemetery next to my father, who she made a footstone, and it was together for eternity. And my mom was a blessing. Her and I did so much together. This is a real hard adjustment. And then she would tell me, "You need to remake your life." Those would be her words. So, thank you for coming. This is my little Will. Where's Drew? There he is. Do I get a hug from Drew? This is double trouble, Drew. And then where's Rory? Oh, and these are her 3 great-grandsons.
Yep.
Oh. And then she has a 4th one who is downstairs or outside, and that's Maddox.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Cronum, and Renee asked me if I would prepare a message about Mona for her family and friends. I don't know most of you, but I learned to know Mona a little more from all the people that were up speaking. So I'll leave out some of this that's a little repetitious. But it's a privilege and to speak and an honor to speak about Mona. This is the magical world we never want to leave. We don't want to give up what we can see for what we can't see, but we all have a common destiny. Whatever our differences, we as human beings are all bound by the inevitability of death. In one of the earliest books of the Bible, Job, described as a man after God's own heart, but who was going through an exceptional time of suffering and loss, says, "How frail is humanity, how short is life, how full of trouble. We blossom like a flower and then wither. Like a passing shadow, we disappear quickly." But that is not the whole story. That is not the final word. Later in the book of Job, despite all his suffering, Job gives this triumphant confession of faith, certain that death is not the end of existence, and declaring, "But as for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that he will one day stand upon the earth at last. And after my flesh has been destroyed, yet in my body I will see God. I will see him for myself,